Re-TIRED-ment is what I want to call this episode 4. Welcome everybody and thank you for tuning in again to Real Life with Richard episode 4. I entitled this Re-TIRED-ment, a play on retirement, where I talk about my retirement. I retired a year ago this month, January 31st, 2020, January 30th of 2023. So I'm recording this on January 27th, 2024. So it's been 1 year of retirement, and I figured I'll share some of my thoughts. Here's some of the things I hope to answer in this episode. Excuse me. One, why did I retire when I did? Two, what did I expect compared to what was, what did, or what has happened since I retired? What was the biggest surprise? And there's a bonus. I'll give you all a few takeaways, just sharing my thoughts for those who might be thinking of retirement or wondering what that looks like for someone. So why I retired when I did? I shared with one of my adult nieces, and one of her first questions was, "Uncle Richard, why are you retiring now?" The short, easiest answer is, besides breathing and being able to get a check for the rest of my life, that's the easiest response. I'm like, why not retire when I could? Per the conversation with my wife, we had talked about it approximately three years out, and I had gone to the retirement system, PERS, here in Mississippi. I retired from the public sector, from the state of Mississippi. I worked for 3 state agencies: the Secretary of State's office, the Mississippi Department of Agriculture and Commerce. That's where I worked the longest, for 16 and a quarter years. And my last 7 and a quarter years was with the Mississippi Department of Education. I worked a total of 26 and a half years of actually working, but with leave and vacation time, I was able to get credit for 28 years of service. So when my wife and I started talking about this, it was approximately 3 years out. So I go to PERS, the retirement system, and I asked 2 fundamental questions. One was, when is as soon as I can retire? Because I was grandfathered into the 25-year plan, and they told me when that would be. And then I said, for the second option, that if I chose to stay 28 years, and I won't get into the complexities of that here, but if you're watching this on YouTube, leave me comments, and if it's on Spotify, also leave me a comment, or some other audio platform. Feel free to reach out to me, and I'd be happy to answer any specifics you have, but I won't go into the details in this episode. But just know, at 25 years, in the state of Mississippi, you roughly get 50% of your, what we call your high four, about 50% of what your salary was pretty much for the rest of your life. But when you make it to 28 years, you get options, and there's a whole bunch of options and how it breaks out. And in conversation with my wife, we made the best decision for our family and what that looks like for that 28 years. Again, I would dedicate a whole episode to this. I won't get into it here and now, but I will share with you that between the 25 and the 28 years, in some of my therapeutic sessions, my therapist told me, you need to retire now. He said, for whatever reason, whatever the options are that you're holding on for, it is not worth your mental and emotional well-being. And I was really going through some challenges in that space. Nevertheless, I did not take that good advice, and I don't know what ill effects it had or has had on me, But when I retired, I was 52 years old. My daughter was 4. She's 5. I'm 53 now, and she's 5. Again, in conversation and collaboration with my family, we collectively and I internally made the best decision for my family at that moment, and that includes staying for that 28 years to exercise those options. So that's the short version. Who wouldn't want to retire, get a check for the rest of their lives? So what did I expect to do in retirement compared to what I actually did? Going into retirement, I asked my wife. Originally, I said 60 days, then I said 90 days. I said, hey, I've worked most of my life, and I'll cover this also in future episodes. I'm the 7th of 8 children, the youngest of 5 boys of my parents' children. We were raised by workaholics, and most of us are basically no strangers to work. We all work a lot of hours, long time, and for long periods of time. So I was no uh, stranger to work. And in fact, I had worked multiple jobs most of my adult life. I've always had at least two jobs proper most of my life, a primary and a secondary. For supplementary income. So that was one of the hugest reasons. And I keep teasing that I would give more details of why I stepped down from pastoring, but I tell you, it was a phased event. When I asked the 2 questions about when I could retire, 25 years and 28 years, originally the 28-year trajectory was as early as November 2022 and as late as February 2023. But as we got closer to it and narrowed it down, it was ended up being January 2023. So I took retirement with that. I like the fact of getting a check the rest of my life. So what I expected to do upon retirement was to find an office, rent some office space, and go back into full-time entrepreneurship in the consulting space. I had did that prior to becoming a pastor. My LLC was established in 2002, I believe it was. So it's been, oh my God, like 22 years that I've had my LLC. Have not been very active in past few years because when I was active in ministerial leadership, I just didn't much have the time. But Scott Solutions LLC, in good standings with Mississippi Secretary of State's office. So I was going to just resume consulting in that space, but an opportunity came along in the position I'm currently in. 2.5 months into retirement, I accepted a new position. Ironically enough, the same adult niece that asked me why I was retiring said, Uncle Richard, why are you going back to work? Well, great question. And the way I answered my niece's question, I answered in this episode too. Checked all the boxes. 100% remote work is what we call it, distributed work, but 100% remote work. The company that I'm currently working for, we don't even have a corporate headquarters. Everybody from the leadership all the way down the line, we all work 100% remote. 2, 36-hour work week. We have half day Fridays every week. And the last one is the most important. I shared earlier in this episode that my therapist literally told me, do not go back into your place of employment. I won't go into details in this episode on this now. But by definition, I was in a toxic environment. And once retirement and stepping away from that, I promised myself that I would never put myself in a mental, emotional, harmful space intentionally. Any of us can end up unintentionally or stumble into something. So during the interviewing process, third round of interviews for the position that I'm currently in, I literally asked, Is this a psychologically safe place to work? And I sat back and I waited. And I said, if you need a reference, I'll help you. One of the interviewers, now one of my colleagues, actually did a quick Harvard reference lookup. Is one that I would have shared anyway, and it describes what a psychologically safe workplace is. And again, not to go into details, but just to overly simplify for this is, it's a safe place to grow and make mistakes where there is no fear of harm or retaliation, loss of employment, or people coming down on you. And that says the third reason, 100% remote, 36-hour work week, and number three, peaceful, happy, healthy working environment. I work with some of the nicest, most kind, supportive people imaginable. Genuinely kind. I have had one-on-ones with the CEO. I regularly meet with my director, and I've met with my director's boss, the vice president who reports to the CEO. Kind people, helpful people. Okay. What was the biggest surprise in retirement? The first one was, I thought of this after I started recording because I did make some notes to make sure I got my points, was what I did not know was while you're active, while you're a full-time active employee in the public sector in the state of Mississippi, we always got paid the last working day of the month. What I did not realize was, excuse me, as of February 1st, I was officially retired of 2023, and I asked when I would get my first check. I thought it'd be a month later. When I retired, the end of January, I got my last full-time employee check. The very next day, I qualified to get my first retirement check. That was a big surprise, and what a blessing. I actually didn't get it until about a week later because they have to paper mail your first check. And as they described to me, your endorsement of that check is validation that you fully embrace and accept retirement. And I've been getting direct deposit ever since. So that was a big surprise. Now, the next one was a genuine surprise, and it may surprise you too. But several weeks into retirement, it took a couple weeks for it to really weigh in, but I realized that I needed a vacation. I still need a vacation. I learned quickly that I thought, I keep personalizing it for me, that vacation is only a break from work. But I quickly learned in the early weeks I was in retirement, that a vacation is a break from the monotony, a break from the routine, a break from the norm, a break just from your regular life. So the surprise was life is still happening, and I still had my daily routines, just not work. So I was getting a rest from work, but there was still expectations of dropping my daughter off and sometime, picking up, preparing meals for her, other chores and tasks around the house, activities that we did as a family, and things like that. So I still had life happening, and I realized, oh my God, I still need a vacation. Tried to rehearse this line a couple times. Hopefully, I had about 3 weeks into retirement, I sat on my sofa, and it was the first time that I'd actually allowed myself to just exhale, just to breathe, and to set that weight down, to realize that I had actually made it to this point. I've been working so hard, so much, so long, not just in the work of the natural vocational sense, but even in the pastoral sense, just carrying the weight of life, uh, helping friends, family. It just sitting there on my sofa that Tuesday, right about noon, being removed from the busyness of work. I think I was experiencing postponed grief. Uh, my daddy's baby brother, my uncle, one of my spiritual mentors, had passed. Just over a year later, his son passed from COVID complications. I lose uh, my nephew. Just it was just a weight lifted, and I sat there and cried because I just needed that relief and that release to know that I had made it there. I was also overwhelmed with gratitude that the weight of the reality, as a man of faith, I don't subscribe to the holistic embrace of luck, but it was divine guidance as an alternative, that I had taken sound, wise advice early enough that I was able to be in a financial position to actually embrace retirement at 52 years old and only choose to work another day in my life if I chose to, but did not have to because of some of the early choices I made. And I remember thinking, when I was in my 20s, unlike some of you who may be listening to this or watching this, but I knew everything. So by the time I graduated, Southern Miss, a bit of comic relief, and I'll speak more to this later on at some point, but I actually crammed 7 years into my 4 year degree at Southern Miss. But when I started working at 26 years old, I knew everything. And if you had told me that 26 and a half years later, I'd still be in the state of Mississippi, I would tell you need to have your head checked, because I just wouldn't have believed it. But what a blessing it was to have stayed with the state more than a quarter century, to be able to retire and to have benefits, not just for me, but for my wife and my daughter, for the rest of our natural lives, and to have been good stewards of our finances. Uh, and lastly, I want to make this point too, as far as what was the big surprise. 3 weeks in, it took me approximately 3 weeks to start getting up, getting dressed, or to have an expectation left for work. One of my friends once told me that his therapist told him that you need to be on vacation or separated from work long enough that when you wake up in the morning, the first thing you think about is not work. And I'm humbled to say, even after I fully retired, it took me about 3 weeks, about the time I'm boo-hooing and crying my eyes out on that sofa, where I learned to be at ease, that there was no responsibility. At this point, I have stepped down from pastoring. I'm retired. All I had to do, drop my daughter off at school and go to Fusion Coffee House. They're not a sponsor. That's a shameless plug. I call it my sanctuary. But Fusion Coffee House in Ridgeland, Mississippi was one of my favorite places to hang out. I would go there and drink my chai tea. That was it. So I want to narrow it down to wrap it up. Here's my advice to anyone who's considering retirement. If you are young, 20 something or 30 something, I would advise you to save as much money as soon as you can, as much as you can, early enough. Lower your debt, carry no debt if all possible. Yes, I had student loans. Yes, we've taken out auto loans and for vehicles. So I get it that there are some things in life that does require us to finance, but keep your debt as low as possible and have a plan for retirement. Know this. This is what I'm about to share with you. You don't hear a lot of people talk about, but upon retirement, your income actually decreases. I think I shared early on in the 25 year space. If you retire in the public sector from the state of Mississippi, your income, your high 4 years, you get approximately 50%. So imagine your salary, whatever it is, being cut in half. So that's a humbling thing about retirement, is that you don't retire with your full income. Your retirement income is generally going to be less. Of course, the longer you work, the larger it'll be. But I shared also early on that I went back to work and I wanted to retire early enough to still have some vitality, some youthfulness to continue to work. So now I work one job but get two checks. Have a plan for what you will do next. I think my therapist was genuinely pleasantly surprised when he had asked me in one of my sessions, what are your retirement plans? And by the time I got to contingency maybe 4 or plan C, D, or F, he was like, oh, okay. Most of my clients, when I asked that question, they ponder and wonder what they were going to do. And I told you I was going to go back into consulting. If that didn't work, I always thought or considered getting another job. Thirdly, I was going to go back into the teaching space. I genuinely love teaching. Quite frankly, I miss teaching and preaching, even in the ministerial, theological space. But that is still a consideration to get back into the teaching space at the college level. Please help me spread the word about my new podcast, particularly if you find it helpful. I would love a dialogue, comment in, if you're on YouTube, in the comments down below. And I am working on actually getting a comment service that's independent from the podcast itself, so I can drive dialogue, because I like to hear your feedbacks and thoughts. I'm eager to hear what you think about the content and what you're going through or what's going on in your life. I'd like to touch bases with you and help you out. So help spread the word. Subscribe to the channel on YouTube, on Spotify, and I'll look to spread it out to more podcast outlets soon. Thanks for listening to Real Life with Richard. This is Richard L. Scott signing out. Until next time, God bless.